There are three constants in life: death, taxes, and Kenjaku scheming. He's the mastermind behind the Shibuya incident and the Culling Games. And probably all around the brainiest character of Jujutsu Kaisen. So how does a brain with a mouth do all that? Let's get right into it. The first taste of Kenjaku we get is just a peek at someone who is seemingly Geto Sukuru, a recently deceased special grade sorcerer. Geto's innate technique is curse spirit manipulation, which allows the user to absorb any amount of curses. The requirements for this are either the curse is 2 grades below the user, or defeating them in battle. There is one drawback, however, that any curses captured cannot grow any stronger than when they originally acquired. The only other things that you need to know about Geto for this video is that he was Gojo's best friend, wanted to rid the world of non-sorcerers, and debated with Yuki Tsukumo on how to deal with it. When it comes down to it though, some things are wrong about Geto from the get-go. Kenjaku's trademark cross-shaped stitches covered Geto's forehead. The last time Geto appeared in Volume 0, he was killed by Gojo. This possession differs from what we're used to seeing with Yuji or Hana. Kenjaku does not incarnate in his hosts, as his innate technique is piloting people's bodies, storing up to 3 new techniques from the bodies he steals. Though, let's not get too excited. Before we go forward, we must go back. Kenjaku isn't a teenager or in his mid to late 20s like the rest of the cast. Kenjaku has lived continuously, unlike Sukuna, for 1,000 years. His legacy looms large, even before we knew it was the same guy who would go on to possess Geto's body. Noritoshi Kamo lived 150 years ago, known as the evilest sorcerer in history. What earned him this moniker was this: by mixing a human woman who was capable of siring a half-human, half-cursed child, cursed spirits, and his own blood to create the death paintings. These uncanny combinations of curse and human are considered abominations by Jujutsu society. One of them is my namesake, Choso, the eldest of the death paintings. It's a little more clear why he is considered the evilest sorcerer when you realize that the children born of this woman were all not allowed to come to term and placed into jars, all 9 of them. These death paintings didn't have the luxury of dying, as they were alive in those jars for 150 years. This, of course, was not the real Noritoshi Kamo, as we see those telltale stitches on his forehead. We learn that it was Kenjaku all along. Since then, Kenjaku has body hopped a few times. This one is our last stop before we're in the current day. Kaori Itadori, the mother of our main character, Yuji Itadori. We don't know much about her, but we know she died, had a gravity-based technique, and got possessed by Kenjaku. This is one of those weird times when you find out Yuji's biological mom is a primary antagonist of the series. This is only important for a fight later, and the fact that Yuji was more or less engineered to be a vessel. Now, onto the current day. In the current day, Kenjaku is the ringleader of a group of curses. With these ones, he's only manipulating the regular way. Their common goal is to seal Gojo. His plan doesn't really need his comrades past the Shibuya incident, however. With the Shibuya arc in mind, Kenjaku plays the role of the main antagonist here. Kenjaku is a master of barrier techniques, second only to Tengen, whose ginormous barriers seal the curses of Japan within the country. Without this barrier mastery, Kenjaku would not have been able to single out Gojo properly. The wily curse user forces Gojo into a rock in a hard place, facing down 3 special grade curse level opponents: Choso, Hanami, and Jogo. Hanami and Jogo use a new technique together, domain amplification. This ability allows you to bypass the innate technique of another sorcerer, at the cost of you not being able to use your own innate technique either. This is essential, as otherwise their attacks would just ping off Gojo like it was nothing.
Stand a chance if it means we have to fight that thing for a full minute?
The thing is, Gojo could probably take out all 3 of them with a single domain expansion. However, Kenjaku has accounted for this. Gojo does not kill civilians. His heroic nature is his downfall, as there are throngs of people around him in this bustling Shibuya station on Halloween night. It really doesn't make room for his flashy moves. Gojo is him, so he makes do and crushes Hanami to death with infinity against a wall to avoid excess casualties. He would have finished off Choso and Jogo too, but they were fast enough to run away. In Jogo's case, he ended up 1 arm lighter first. Mahito shows up after converting an entire train of people into monsters with his cursed technique. Then Gojo is forced to use his domain expansion to get rid of Mahito's transfigured human army. After doing this, Gojo is exhausted, and this is when Kenjaku strikes. The prison realm, capable of sealing anyone and anything, but it takes an entire minute. This is where Kenjaku's brilliance shines through though. Knowing Gojo had a personal connection with Geto, Gojo immediately has a flashback to his teenage years with Geto. This is just a mere moment for everyone else, but for Gojo, far longer than a minute has passed. Kenjaku takes his time relishing in his success, with Gojo in his clutches. Gojo asks who he is, knowing the body of his best friend was defiled. In one of the biggest moments of the series, we see the stitches come off, revealing the wretched teeth brain underneath. After he finishes gloating, he seals the prison realm, sealing Gojo. Finishing out his part of the plan, let's get to the end of the arc. Kenjaku laments he's incapable of creating something stronger than himself. While everyone closes in on Kenjaku after their respective fights in Shibuya, Kenjaku takes this opportunity to explain his grandiose plan. He starts off with Geto's and now his maximum technique, Uzumaki. Maximum Uzumaki sacrifices the cursed spirits, a last-ditch gyre of cursed energy. This is strong, but the catch is, if you sacrifice a semi-grade 1 curse or higher, it activates that curse's technique. He uses Mahito's technique in this Uzumaki. I'll explain why a bit later. Choso, after learning that his quote-unquote father made him almost kill one of his brothers, that being Yuji. Choso then fights him briefly, but only really succeeds in letting Kenjaku monologue, as he is far beyond Choso's pay grade. This is where Yuki comes in. Geto had met Yuki before, and she reiterates their prior disagreement, as Yuki believes that humans should move on from curses and cursed energy. Kenjaku's solution is quite the opposite. True chaos that not even he can control, where both curses and sorcerers fight to the death for supremacy. This leads directly into his greatest experiment yet, the Culling Games. After speaking with Yuki, Kenjaku releases the seals on the incarnated sorcerers and awakens the potentials of those with innate curse techniques. So why is Kenjaku so focused on making someone stronger than himself? He is super bored. The modern era pales in comparison to what old heads, in this case literally, call the golden age of curses, also known as the Heian period. By creating all this trouble, it strengthens curses and the new sorcerers immensely. In short, his goal is to find something worth his time, and in the same breath, bring back the Heian era. This is where the spoilers section will start, so anime onlys, this is your opportunity to avoid spoilers. If you don't mind spoilers, or have already read the manga, enjoy the rest of the video. The Culling Games, a massive battle royale engineered to breed strong sorcerers. But Kenjaku is already strong, so he didn't really participate until later. Skipping forward a bunch from the end of Shibuya, 66 chapters to be exact. Now at this point, Kenjaku just needs the final key piece to finish the Culling Games, Tengen. Tengen explains that he has slowly become more curse-like, so now it's possible Kenjaku can take control of Tengen with his cursed spirit manipulation. Since Tengen is in danger, Yuki and Choso, after hearing this explanation, are chosen to guard Tengen. Tengen suggests Choso and Yuki take advantage of the downtime between domain expansion and being able to use your innate technique. You'll see later this is a bit of a mistake. Before they fight, Kenjaku explains that preparations are done, and if he wins here, Japan is doomed, if not the whole world. Kenjaku changes the empty barrier into a movie theater to provide visual aid to his master plan. Opening with how Yuki wants to deal with curses, Kenjaku then gets into his plan. Instead of mixing people and curses like he did before, he will use Tengen as the base. The merger will have the cursed energy of the whole country in one body. Not even Kenjaku knows what will happen. Choso, after listening, asks why. To what end? Kenjaku responds, "I just find it interesting. Maybe it'll have a clown face," and laughs. We cut back to the three sorcerers planning on what to do against Kenjaku. Choso assumes he will only get in the way, so his goal is, while taking on Kenjaku first, is to make him show off what techniques he has, in the best case scenario, forcing Kenjaku to use his domain expansion early. Kenjaku, of course, immediately guesses this, relying only on weak but numerous curses to keep Choso on the back foot. Continuing on his usual monologue, he mocks Choso, like all of his children, for being not strong enough to handle their creator. This disparagement enrages Choso, leading to his second wind, from him imagining his brothers pushing him forward. Kenjaku remarks on how he knows the weakness of piercing blood. It can't keep up its initial speed. Choso, in turn, makes use of all three of his brothers' moves. The Wing King of Eso, the elegance of Kechizu, and the great strength of Yuji. Lastly, making use of his own technique, Supernova. However, it does not go off for some reason, and this is when Yuki decides to make her entrance. She praises Choso and calls him Big Brother. He takes being a big brother very seriously. Kenjaku starts the fight with Yuki on her own, summoning a giant elephant curse, Ganesha. Yuki folds her Shikigami Garuda into a ball, soccer kicking him straight through Ganesha, much to Kenjaku's surprise. Taking advantage of Kenjaku's confusion, Yuki lands the first hit on him, sending him flying through walls and snapping his arm in half. As Yuki Tsukumo tells Kenjaku, her innate curse technique is Star Rage, being able to change the virtual mass of herself and her Shikigami, Garuda. After listening to Yuki explain her technique, Kenjaku worries he might not be able to handle her. Yuki is still deducing how Kenjaku stopped Choso's supernova, zeroing in on how it must be an innate technique, not from a curse. Kenjaku is worrying about Yuki's domain. Seizing the opportunity with Yuki not opening her domain, Kenjaku acts first. Domain expansion. Ruin profusion. Falling straight into Tengen's trap. We flip back to Tengen's plan, taking advantage of their setting. Tengen is housed in the cursed warehouse of Jujutsu High, which is a series of empty barriers within a large tree. Any sorcerer proficient enough in barrier techniques is capable of manipulating them. As the second best barrier user only to Tengen, Kenjaku would be more than willing to stay within those barriers. Tengen being the best barrier user here, they would have a good view of what's happening while they fight within the barrier, and will only need 10 seconds to remove Kenjaku's domain expansion. This is why Yuki held back instead of immediately expanding her own domain, choosing instead to use Simple Domain, an anti-domain technique. Kenjaku scoffs, and we immediately know something's wrong as he stripped her Simple Domain, leaving Yuki a mangled mess. Tengen couldn't dispel the domain in time. Kenjaku thinks maybe she could have had a chance with the domain clash. Then he notices her Shikigami hasn't vanished. That's because Yuki Tsukumo is somehow still alive. As a feint, Yuki attacks Kenjaku, forsaking healing herself to give Choso an opening to re-enter the battle. Back to planning in the past, Choso explains he needs to lose for Kenjaku to expect him not to come back. Otherwise, Kenjaku will just not use his domain. Tangling up Kenjaku and holding him down with Garuda, Choso presses his hand together, shouting, "It's parent-tilling time," and shoots out his piercing blood. Taking damage and getting pummeled now by both Choso and Yuki, he resorts to his gravity technique, stopping Garuda and Choso in their tracks. Thinking she can take advantage of his cooldown in between attacks, Yuki rushes in, only to have her stomach erased with a mini Uzumaki. The final flashback here, I promise. Choso and Yuki are out drinking. Choso wallows in regret, choosing to be a curse, blaming himself for the death of his brothers and how he killed people, wishing he could fight along with his 3 brothers. Sad that he left Yuji to fend for himself. Yuki reminds him that if he dies now, Yuji will be alone again. Choso thanks her, and now we're back to the fight. Choso, right here, right now, you've died as a curse. So now live on, this time as a human, Yuki says as Tengen lets Choso out of the barrier. Kenjaku smashes Yuki into the ground with his gravity. She's not even in one piece at this point. As Tengen shows up, Kenjaku looks at them confused. Kenjaku is looking away. Taking the chance, Yuki's hand clenched around his ankle. The mass produced by Yuki's curse technique doesn't usually affect things other than herself properly, but that only goes up to a point. Yuki tells Kenjaku that when you get down to it, when the numbers get high enough, gravity and mass end up in the same place. As she musters all the mass she can, you see a giant black hole suck them in, and it blinks once, then into nothing. The sun shines through the roof of the warehouse. We pan down to Kenjaku picking himself up from under the rubble, confirming his victory. Tengen asks Kenjaku if it was reversal. Kenjaku responds it was the opposite. It was a gravity reversal technique the whole time. Without Tengen getting rid of the black hole, destroying the whole world. Kenjaku thanks Tengen, then absorbs them, not at all satisfied in winning. Kenjaku is successful in gaining Tengen, but he still needs for the Culling game to end to start the merger, which requires that every player except him or Sukuna is eliminated. Time since we left off, Kenjaku has been picking off sorcerers. As he kills Hazanoki, he hears some silly singing. Here saunters in Takaba, the comedian. Kenjaku tells him how he's not particularly impressed with the newly awakened sorcerers. He attacks Takaba. Much to his surprise, Takaba is unhurt. Now it's time for the best side character to shine. Even Kenjaku's impressed. The way that Takaba is capable of hamming it up while getting bitten by a Kenjaku centipede. Kenjaku is convinced his innate technique must be something involving manifesting his imagination, as he isn't dodging his attacks as much as outright negating the damage. Flexing his supposed comedic chops, Takaba tells Kenjaku about all of the competitions he went to. Kenjaku matches him mark for mark. Both characters are surprised how they're hitting it off, making conversation. Takaba knows about the whole evil plan thing already, but asking Kenjaku something he didn't know he needed to hear. What if there was something more fun instead of fighting? Takaba hits him back to back with terrible puns. But with the third, Kenjaku explains the punchline to land, there has to be a proper setup. Feeling the sting of Kenjaku's retort, Takaba is hit with a huge elbow to the chest. Kenjaku had deduced Takaba's ability must be based around willpower and faith in himself. This deluded comedian still has plenty in the tank though, challenging Kenjaku to a staring contest. The first one to laugh loses. Takaba folds immediately to Kenjaku's hilarious duck face. Kenjaku lands another hit, sending Takaba sprawling. He ends up landing right next to Hazunoki's corpse. While Takaba's on the ground, losing his composure, Kenjaku tells him to laugh. Aren't you a comedian? Back to the past. Takaba is laying in his comedy partner in college, always skipping practice and drinking. He suggests maybe Takaba is jealous about his success with women. Takaba punches him in the face for that. Time after time, he ends up a solo act again, asking himself why they even start being a comedian in the first place. Aloof and serious, it was hard for him to make friends, and with laughter he could maybe turn it around. Only for friends, but never for partners. Maybe if they just knew the real him they would get it. After mulling it over with himself literally, he figures out by trying so hard and failing, he had lost his ability to be a proper comedian. Not really putting himself out there wasn't enough, and for that Takaba apologizes from the bottom of his heart, prostrating in front of Kenjaku. Standing back up and brimming with confidence, Takaba assures he'll make Kenjaku laugh. Kenjaku summons Special Grade Rebellion Spirit, Okuro o Otake. Takaba responds by running it over with a truck. From there on, things get crazy. Takaba and Kenjaku have a blast, going from one gang to another, fighting the whole time, like picking each other's noses during rock, paper, scissors. After that mess, Kenjaku and Takaba splash around in the ocean, finally admitting to themselves they're having fun. Kenjaku hasn't had so much fun in hundreds of years, knowing now the Culling Games is finally worth it. Kenjaku tries to drown Takaba, but the water is Fanta. Kenjaku has been taking damage this whole time, but Takaba is completely unaffected by his own ability. Now that they've finished their improv warm-up, it's time to take the stage. They start rough, but right their ship quickly. An escalating story about Momotaro and someone's lost dog. They continue on and on about comedy that doesn't really make sense properly in English. After presumably acing it, Takaba fears the curtain. Unfortunately, Kenjaku catches up to him. Conceding his defeat, Takaba thanks him. Kenjaku says he was hilarious, all while Takaba is lying on the ground in barrier robes. Both men finally find a partner worth their while. This sweet moment is interrupted by Yuta Akotsu, the strongest sorcerer, as he slices Kenjaku's head clean off. It was the plan all along, as Takaba doesn't kill people. Kenjaku's last action before his death was to give Megumi, who Sukuna is now possessing, the power to initiate the merger between Tengen and humanity. Yuta catches Kenjaku and puts his katana through his brain. Kenjaku dies with few regrets, as he is faithful in Sukuna carrying out his plans and had the time of his life with Takaba. This is the end of the big bad brain Kenjaku. Wow, you made it to the end of the video. Well, I kind of ran out of things to say, but thanks for watching. If you like this video, be sure to subscribe and make sure to check out our Discord.